When I was a kid, I loved my grandma. She meant everything to me. We grew up in New Zealand, and she would come visit us. And I remember thinking, that's what an old person looks like, because we didn't really have any other of those in our house at the time. One very striking memory that I have is watching her try to play tag with me when I was 6 or 7. I was running around, and I was very, very excited. And I was asking her, why can't you come play tag? Why can't you catch me? And she said, because I'm old, because it hurts, because I can't get up from my seat without it really hurting me. And I was like, well, that's terrible. Obviously you have a disease. And so I ran to my mom and said, hey mom, grandma's sick. How do we fix it? And she said, honey, we can't. It's called aging. That to me has been kind of the seminal moment of my life, because I think most people would have accepted that. And if I'd heard that as an adult, I probably would have thought, oh, that's a rational explanation. But at the time, I was infuriated. How dare you tell me that somebody that I love must suffer because there is some concept we don't understand that we say is inevitable and that we take for granted. I ran to my room and I got on the computer and I Googled aging science. And what came up was quite fascinating. I spent the next couple of years, up until I was 12, trying to understand the field. Sorry, literally. It's actually amazing. So we have shown in worms, in flies, in mice, in genes that translate over to human, that it is possible to make these organisms live longer. We can tenfold increase the lifespan of a worm. We can 60% increase the lifespan of a mouse. And by doing very simple things that could be translatable into a patient, into a human. And so I was reading about this stuff, and I was flabbergasted. I was like, this is the most important thing in the world. If we can do this, everything changes. Maybe we can't in human, but we can in worms, mice, flies, and possibly monkeys a little bit, certain therapeutics. And so I emailed a professor at UCSF. I was in my New Zealand bedroom, and I typed this email to her, and I said, hello, my name's Laura Deming. I'm 12 years old and live in New Zealand. And I just thought that I would email you because I really love what you're working on, and I want to come visit you at your lab. And my life changed that day because she wrote back and said, sure. And so there I was sitting in New Zealand thinking, gosh, how do I get to California? That's going to be a challenge. Eventually, a cousin's wedding allowed us to make it over to Half Moon Bay. I took a day trip up to the city. I met with Professor Kenyon. And at the conclusion of that, I went home. My mind was blown. I was like, this is the best place, this is the only place in the world to be. And I wrote her an email and I said, can I please come work in your lab? I will scrub the floors. I will write labels for things. Just please, please, please let me work with you. And she wrote back and said, sure. So I was like, all right. I am 12. I live in New Zealand. Somehow get over to the US. But I made it in the end through various machinations. I ended up working in her lab and taking graduate coursework for 2 years. After that, I went to MIT and did an undergrad, or half of one in physics, and then 2 years into that, moved back out here to the Bay Area. And really a lot of what we focus on now, I spent the past 7 years running a venture capital fund, investing in companies in the aging space. We have over $1 billion in total value of the companies that we've helped create, and at this point there are 2 to 3 drugs either in clinic or on their way to clinic. So I think the thing we're most proud of is that the kinds of ideas that I was reading about on my MacBook computer in my bedroom in New Zealand when I was 12 are turning into therapies that are going to be in patients or are already in patients this year. And that's really, to me, that's like an amazing feeling. I think that the space in general is one that requires a lot of patience and hard work. So I remember when I first entered this, I thought, oh, it'll be like a year. The problem is financing. Nobody just pays attention to this stuff. And so if we just get more money to come into the space, next year we'll have therapies in patients. And 7 years later, it's like, well, yeah, it took a lot longer and it was a lot more expensive than we thought it would be. But I think that there's been a massive influx of interest. And as we move forward, the thing that I'm most amazed by is how many people I talk to think that what we're doing is bad or wrong. So if I go on an airplane, as I used to, and I tell the person next to me what I'm working on, they'll usually say, well, that's terrible. I would never want to live longer. Or I don't think my family should have that option. And I think when I was a kid, I was just like, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I think with age, I started to understand that people have different options. Life is hard. Sometimes you don't want to think about living as long as you might. At the same time, I think I've come to very strongly believe that this is an incorrect way of thinking. I think that it's not correct that everyone should live as long as 200 years or 300 years or 20 years. I think that there's no correct number of years to live. But I do very strongly believe that everyone should have the option to live as long as they would like. And the important part of that sentence is everyone. So everyone on the planet, if we make these therapies, should have the rights to access them. So that's what we're working on. I think the next decade or so we'll be trying to get these therapies actually proven out in humans, and the decade after that, which I think will be an even harder challenge, we'll be trying to make them accessible to everyone in the world. Yeah, thank you for your time.